imagine what it's like. You know, you go home at the end of a long week of capsule building, and you're out mowing the lawn on a Saturday afternoon, and your neighbor comes out and says, "Hey, how's work?" You know, what was the reaction you got from other people in LA County that weren't in the industry? Did they want to come up and shake your hand and give you a high five? Did they just barrage you with a million questions? Were they tuned into what you were doing?
Well, it was rare that you had those moments to go home and eat a moment. 60-hour work weeks were not uncommon. You came in to work problems, to get things accomplished, and you did it until the job was done. So there wasn't a lot of that necessarily free time. If you did have the free time, you were crashed out on the couch or, you know, just trying to regenerate to get back at it. But the other problem was, even with the family, trying to talk to the family. Well, gee, Dad, what'd you do today? Well, how do you describe that? And tell them about it. And you just spent all that week trying to work on that problem. You didn't want to revisit it. Other people, the boss and NASA, were going to be doing that with you. One of the real problems that we had to contend with was the challenge working on Apollo had with families and family relationships. Our incidence of divorce and was higher than I think any other group in the nation at that time. For me personally and many others, it was lost memories, birthdays missed because you were working overtime, ball games that you couldn't go to, those memories that you couldn't get. Now, occasionally, when you did end up at one of those parties and the host would come over and say, "Hey, he works over there at the, Apollo." Oh, wow, the awestruck. Tell us about it. And then it's like you're expected, well, I'm supposed to give them a dissertation on aerodynamic. For me, it was summarized, and I still use it to this day. My son, when he was in grammar school, they had that event where they invite the parents to come in, career day, I guess, come and talk to the kids about what you do. And so he asked me, he says, "Dad, can you come in and talk to the class?" I said, "Sure." So I'm there and I'm waiting with a couple of the other parents, and teacher tells my son, "Steve, come up and introduce your dad and tell everybody what he does." And he kind of shuffles up to the front of the class and turns around. He was not a big one for speaking. And he looks at me and then he looks at them. "This is my dad. He works at the spaceship factory." That was the best introduction I've ever had. And to this day, I enjoy being called upon to talk about life at the spaceship factory. Because, yeah, that's what we did.
I want to pick up on that very thing, Jerry. A lot of us worked a lot of hours, and we were organized in a very efficient manner, and we all had jobs, and we had more jobs than we had time, and we had a lot of good people, but it was just hard work, a lot of setbacks and all that. So we did work long hours and weekends and some holidays. And my advice after going through all that to people like you, don't do that. You know, there's more to life than work, and Apollo was a big deal, and I enjoyed every minute that I worked on it. But it's a mistake to neglect your family and to neglect your other interests, your spiritual lives, whatever else, distant family, friends. You got to make room for that. And that's my advice to the population today.
So, one of you mentioned in your opening remarks, I agree, even 50 years later, most of us consider Apollo to be one of, if not the greatest technical accomplishment of our species, and of any species we're aware of in existence. Each of you did that relatively early in your careers. How the heck do you follow up that act?
Well, it was easy. At North American Aviation, I remember when I was sitting in the mission support room at Downey, thinking, okay, we landed on the moon, we did the whole thing. What am I gonna do now? It's all gonna be nothingness from now. We got the shuttle contract. So here we are, going up again. That's my answer.
There was a movie years ago, several years ago, called Pay It Forward. And for me it was, well, first of all, just like Chuck, at the end of the Apollo, there was this gap, and we lost a lot of great engineers who decided to change careers. Of course, that was also the transition for many of them into infotainment and in movie industry. But those of us who stayed on for shuttle, wow, the brass ring, my gosh, we had more problems than we could ever imagine. And boy, talk about multitasking and 24/7. Here we go again. Let's go do this. So it's just like raising that bar, and another challenge. Well, for me, in 2000, in year 2000, when we closed the Downey plant, and I transitioned over to Huntington Beach, I thought, well, maybe this is a chance, because we were taking 3 different aerospace companies, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, and North American Rockwell, and we were merging those 3 companies together. And I thought, that's 3 separate cultures that are going to have to come together to work as a team. What a great learning experience that can be. So I spent another 3 years watching it and learning. It didn't work. It evolved, but it became something very different. And I can't remember who the quote's from, but if it ain't fun anymore, don't do it. And so for me, it was retirement. But again, like Chuck, it's like you just don't retire. And so I found myself getting more involved in education, started doing some teaching, started getting involved with more outreach programs. And my wife and I started a small company to help STEM teachers learn how to do what we learned to do in terms of developing technologies and teaching it. But still, how do you follow it? You don't. You don't. You just continue. You go on. I guess for me now, though, one of the things I enjoy more than anything else is the opportunity to share with you what it was like back then, what we did, what those stories were. I spend my time with my compatriots here, remembering those stories, but finding ways that we can again share our lessons learned.
We'll have a moment for audience questions in just a moment, but first, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you all. You know, I think now in 2019 is an incredibly exciting time in the aerospace industry. Whether it's civil space or military space, crewed exploration or robotic, commercial companies, big legacy companies or new startups, there's just a lot going on. A huge amount of it's happening here in Southern California, whether that is the legacy providers like the Boeings of the world, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Obviously we have SpaceX, we've got Virgin Orbit, we have a lot of the smaller companies. I know we just had a team from the University of Southern California send a student-built rocket that reached space, the first time that's ever happened. A lot of that happening here. So I'm wondering, is there anything about the modern era of aerospace exploration here in Southern California that particularly captures your attention? And if you had the opportunity to parachute in, if I may, for a day, either to learn or to provide advice, is there one place where you know for sure you'd want to go?
Well, you're right, Will. It's a really exciting time for aerospace. We all thought it would kind of die out because, let's face it, Congress isn't that interested. The budgets for NASA are way down. And, but yet the commercial people, the SpaceX, the Boeing, the Blue Origin, all these guys, your company, Will, a lot going on. I retired 32 years ago, and I'm still working with NASA and these other companies I mentioned, because you've got the NASA committed to deep space. Like if you want to go to Mars, you go on a NASA spacecraft. If you want to go to low Earth orbit like the space station, you sign on with SpaceX or Boeing or Blue Origin or another company. So things are going on in all these areas. The commercial people are talking about they plan to fly people, live people, this year. It's going to slip into next year, but next year is coming right away. We're going to be flying people off a commercial spacecraft. NASA's dragging a little bit. They won't fly people till probably 2023. But it's exciting to me. There's work out there for a lot of people, and there's tools, computer programs that we could not have imagined on Apollo. And people are better educated. The commercial people, the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, the Amazon, they're putting money into space like you wouldn't believe. So if anybody wants to get into it, it's a good place to get.
I agree with Chuck. It's about commercial space development, but more important than that, it's about you and us. We are a nation of explorers, pioneers. It's in our nature. It's what we want to do. What's over the hill? What's around the corner? That's what we're about. And we're happiest when we are exploring. Now, with that being said, you look at the early explorers from Europe and the Orient, and you find that what was the motivation behind that exploration? Money, trade, more spices, more. So the commercial developers, the commercial companies that are out there, they have a responsibility to their stockholders to have a return on that investment. The government has never really had that return on investment motivation. If they had, it was political. And that's another whole dimension of fog and confusion. So I think that we can look now and say that, again, the companies that are out there commercially looking to accomplish these goals, that's where the future is going to be. But that future is really not in their hands. It's in the hands of our young people, the youth. They're going to write the future. You know, we learned a long time ago that yes, you can put your mind to something and accomplish it, but there's certain things that take a certain amount of time, and that's all there is to it. You know, 24-hour paint doesn't dry in an hour. So helping, and this is where I guess my goal comes now, helping the children see that future, see a future, comes down to just one simple action and activity. Teach your children to dream, because that's what will take us beyond the planet's occasion.